The Austrian Grand Prix, while it provided some interesting on-track duels like the one between Perez and Sainz, was also overshadowed by a very sensitive topic about the way FIA polices the races. An astonishing number of over 1,500 instances of breaching the track limits were reviewed for hours after the race, and what's interesting is that many drivers did not know which position they had finished until early evenings on Sunday. So what happened, and why does the FIA keep struggling to find a solution that will not include them being in the spotlight? In the Austrian Grand Prix, over 100 laps were eliminated due to drivers consistently crossing track boundaries, most notably at the final corners entrance and exit. This led to 7 racers, including Lewis Hamilton, Yuki Tsunoda twice, Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, Logan Sargeant, Kevin Magnussen and Pierre Gasly, being penalised during the race. However, race control later had to review a substantial number of potential violations, all amounting to a 4-figure sum, as these infringements were so many that they could not be addressed during the race itself. The Red Bull Ring is infamous for track limit violations, particularly at turn 10. The track's design, with its mid-corner compression causing cars to drift wide and broad curves, enabling drivers to extend the track, contributed significantly to the issue. The problem escalated dramatically this year, with a high number of deleted qualifying laps and, in a way, foreshadowing the extraordinary rate of infractions during the race. Aston Martin launched a protest against the provisional results, given that several cars were not penalised for exceeding track limits. The stewards were made aware of the many deleted laps due to track limit violations, revealed after the protest was lodged. Examination of these laps showed that many violations had not been previously referred to the stewards, and indeed warranted penalties. FIA Race Control was then burdened with reviewing numerous potential violations post-race on Sunday evening, which inevitably resulted in additional penalties. While the top 3 places remained unchanged, with Max Verstappen securing the win, followed by Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez, there were adjustments in points positions and outside the top 10. 4th place Carlos Sainz, 6th place Lewis Hamilton and 9th place Pierre Gasly all received 10-second penalties. This pushed Lando Norris and Fernando Alonso up to 4th and 5th places respectively, while Sainz fell to 6th and Hamilton fell behind his Mercedes teammate George Russell. Lance Stroll advanced to 9th ahead of Gasly, thus gaining 3 points for Aston Martin, while the Constructors' Championship rival Ferrari lost 4. Penalties were also handed to non-point scorers Alex Albon and Logan Sargeant, Esteban Ocon, Nick de Vries and Yuki Tsunoda. This explains why Aston Martin was eager to ensure that FIA reviewed the numerous track limit violations. The issue of crossing the white lines with all 4 wheels is indeed causing an issue, and many argue that if this violation is so common, with over 100 instances logged by the FIA, then the fault may not lie entirely with the drivers. This sentiment is shared by much of the grid, sparking discussions about potential changes to the layout of the Austrian GP. The main hurdle, however, is that F1 isn't the only competition using the Red Bull Ring. The track is frequently used by MotoGP, and one thing motorcycle racers hate is the curbs. While installing a yellow curb similar to the one after turn 2 could deter drivers from pushing their limits for the fastest time, it would only partially address the problem. The issue seems to lie at the intersection of the car's weight and the track's outdated layout. Lewis Hamilton, who is among the first drivers to receive a 5-second penalty after multiple warnings from his race engineer, supports the need for changes to the track layout. However, Hamilton also cited a flaw in his car that contributed to his poor performance in Austria. According to the 7-time world champion, a problem with the front wing caused his car to understeer in turns 9 and 10. This led to Norris's repeated complaints about Hamilton crossing the white lines. When asked to continue reporting this issue, Norris joked that he would be on the radio all the time. Post-race, Norris expressed surprise that Hamilton only received a 5-second penalty for the consistent infractions he committed. Yeah, I was going to do a live commentary at every corner pretty much. Hamilton only got a 5-second penalty? It should be way more. He had about 4 strikes in 1 lap. Norris did complain about the track as well, saying that the drivers could do nothing to improve their whole experience. People on the outside, they complain. They don't understand how difficult it is to stay within the track limits. Yes, I guess you can say I did, and why can't anyone else do it? But it depends on what position you're in. If Fernando was behind me the last 5 or 10 laps, I can assure you that I'd have done track limits once and then I probably would have gotten a penalty. It just depends if you're under pressure. when you're under pressure, you're pushing a little bit more. You have a little bit more of a slide. But that's just like a human error, but it's also like that's racing at the end of the day. I can assure everyone of that, so I don't have sympathy for the people that did get it in a way, but I also don't. The Austrian GP results may not be the final word, as teams that have suffered could potentially challenge their late penalties. However, this won't settle the broader argument about track limits, a topic likely to resurface as the F1 caravans slowly move at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix. Several questions are inevitable in the intervening days. Is F1's rule correct, and should there be a more rigorous enforcement system, or should drivers just strictly adhere to the rules? There will undoubtedly be discussions on whether this episode demonstrates an inherent flaw in F1's track limits rule, or if it merely highlights that drivers have been exploiting this track for too long. The zero-tolerance rule is in place for good reasons. A few years ago, there was considerable criticism about inconsistent rules and separate guidelines for different tracks and corners, and while the idea of diversity seemed appealing in theory, it failed in practice. It appears teams and drivers preferred a universal rule approach. There have been persistent complaints about aggressive curbing acting as a deterrent, as it can cause accidents and damage the cars that run over them. The argument for using the white line is straightforward. Every corner of every track can have a white line marking the edge, while natural deterrents like grass and gravel cannot be consistently applied everywhere. This is why the final corner of the Red Bull Ring no longer uses the exit curb as the natural limit, even though it would work, as drivers who go too wide there will lose time crossing the curb edge. Setting aside the question of whether the rule to police track limits is correct or not, the current rule is being strictly enforced, and it has revealed an absurd number of violations. Despite the inherent challenges of the track, it's a fair bet that if F1 reran this race, we wouldn't see as many issues because drivers now understand the level of scrutiny they're under and can't exploit the rules as they did before. Blaming the track for promoting such risk-taking when the rules are clearly defined doesn't seem entirely fair. Besides, Leclerc didn't have issues all weekend, and neither did Alonso. Max got a few warnings during quali and then tightened up, and you didn't hear about it again. He still got the pole and won by a pit stop, so it is possible to drive there. The excuses from the rest are just that. But for the sake of avoiding all the whining and moaning again, just put a gravel trap there for next year and watch the impossible problem magically fix itself. FIA was consistent. They policed this properly, not too strict, not too lenient, but the problem was the large delay in warnings and penalties, something for which they need to implement a good system in the future. There must be a way to set up a system with sensors or cameras to detect immediately whether the driver is over the line, and surely F1 can afford it because MotoGP seems to fare much better with this particular issue. With such a system in place, the number of excursions would effectively be in real time, so the team can give immediate feedback to the driver. It simply requires a bit of design and software to make it work, the same way that other cautions are handled, like red flags. That way, reviews and penalties will be instantaneous, and the only manual review would be for challenges due to a concession. So what do you guys think? Do you think FIA could handle this better and not throw penalties all over the place? Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.